Welcome to Into the Arms of Morpheus podcast, a quiet story from history. Tonight, the long middle of the sea. Close your eyes. It is somewhere in the middle of the 18th century. You are on a ship, a merchant vessel, three-masted, somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. She is carrying cargo, cloth perhaps, or timber, or barrels of salted provisions, something that needs to move between one continent and another. Something that someone in a counting house has arranged to have transported, and which is now in the hold below you, and which will stay there until the ship arrives wherever it is going. You have been at sea for several weeks. You will be at sea for several more. There is no way to shorten this. The ocean is the distance it is. The only way across it is through it, day by day, at the pace the wind allows. Some days the wind is good, and the ship makes reasonable progress, and the distance ahead contracts by a useful amount. Some days the wind is light, and the ship barely moves, and the distance ahead contracts by almost nothing. And some days, the wind is from the wrong direction entirely, and the ship must tack back and forth across the course, covering 3 miles of ocean to make 1 mile of progress. There is nothing to do now but continue. The ship moves. On a good day, with a steady wind, she covers perhaps 100 miles. The horizon ahead looks exactly like the horizon astern. The ocean does not become visibly smaller as you cross it. The sky does not change. The water is the same grey-green it has been for weeks. The long swells moving under the hull with a patience that the ocean has had since long before anyone was crossing it. Around you in every direction, the ocean stretches to the horizon. The same horizon it has been since you left port. The same water, the same sky, the same slow rhythm passing beneath the hull. The masts trace slow arcs against the sky. The ropes creak. The sails fill and hold and fill again. Nothing is happening. This is what it is to be at sea. Not the sea of stories, which is full of storms and dramatic events and the thrill of arrival. Not the sea of paintings, with heroic waves and ships heeled over hard in the wind. Just the sea as it actually is for the people who work it. An enormous amount of water that needs to be crossed by moving through it slowly, day after day, in a vessel that is doing what it was built to do. Most of a sea voyage in the age of sail was this. Not adventure, just passage. The long middle of the crossing, which lasted weeks, and which was, for the most part, the same each day as the day before it. The day on a sailing ship is divided into watches. 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Around the clock, without stopping, for as many weeks as the voyage takes. There is no day of rest at sea. There is no Sunday that means something different from Saturday. There is only the watch cycle, repeating itself endlessly, dividing each 24 hours into 6 equal portions, each one demanding its share of attention from whoever is assigned to it. The ship's bell marks each half hour of the watch, a single stroke for the first half hour, 2 for the second, 3 for the third, building to 8 bells, which marks the end of the watch and the beginning of the next, at which point the count begins again from 1. The bell rings from its mounting on the forecastle, and the sound of it travels across the deck and down through the open hatches to the men sleeping below. 1 bell, 2 bells, 3 bells. This is the rhythm of life at sea. Not the rhythm of sunrise and sunset, which varies with the season and the latitude, and means something different in northern waters than it does in the tropics. Not the rhythm of the week, which has no meaning in the middle of the ocean, where one day is the same as the next, and Sunday is distinguished from Wednesday only by what the cook does with the remaining stores. Just the bell, and the watch, and the slow turning of the ship through the water, and then the bell again. Men who have sailed for many years carry this rhythm in their bodies long after they return to land. They wake in the night at 4-hour intervals because their bodies have learned to expect the change of watch. They lie in still rooms in port towns and listen for the bell that is not there. The absence of it, after months of its presence, is its own kind of sound, a gap where something used to be that the body notices even in sleep. It takes a long time to stop hearing it. The men who are off watch sleep in hammocks below deck. A hammock on a ship is a particular kind of sleep. The canvas slings from 2 points and cradles the body along its full length, the sides rising around the sleeper, holding everything together. The hammocks are slung close together in the between-deck space, low-ceilinged and dim, lit only by whatever light finds its way through the hatches. The sleeping men are arranged in rows, nearly touching in a full crew, the sounds of the ocean on the other side of the planking a few inches from their ears. In a hammock at sea, the body has no choice but to surrender to the motion. There is nothing to hold on to, nowhere to brace yourself against the movement of the hull. The ship tilts and the hammock swings with it, and you go with the hammock, and the ship rights itself and the hammock swings back, and you go back with it. The motion that would disturb a man in a fixed bunk, always pushing against it, always responding to it, becomes in a hammock something else entirely, something that carries you. Your body learns, after a few days, to stop treating the motion as something to resist and to simply move with it. After that, The sleep is very deep. Deeper than most sleep on land, where the bed is fixed and still, and the body, having nothing to respond to, stays near the surface. At sea in the hammock, with the motion continuous and the sounds of the ocean steady through the hull, and the bell counting its half hours somewhere above, the body goes down fully and stays there. Men who worked the hardest watches slept the deepest. They went under quickly and completely, the way exhausted people do. And they stayed there until the shaking of a shoulder told them their watch had come again. The deep, slow creak of the hull. The water moving past on the other side of the wood. The bell above, distant and regular, counting. A man who has been on the ship for several weeks has stopped noticing any of these sounds individually. They have merged into a single continuous sound, the sound of the ship being itself, being at sea, doing what it does. It is present, but not intrusive. The body sleeps within it, the way it sleeps within the sound of rain on a roof, or wind in the eaves. The sound is simply the world. The world is simply this. Above deck, the watch goes on. The men on duty have their tasks, checking the set of the sails and adjusting them as the wind shifts, tending the rigging, watching the compass and correcting the helmsman when the ship wanders from her course, keeping the log, which measures the ship's speed by trailing a knotted line behind the hull and counting the knots as they run out over a set period of time, making entries in the watch log, recording the conditions, the course, any observations worth noting. Mostly, though, they watch the horizon. It never changes. Day after day, from whatever position on the ship they stand, the horizon is there. The same circle of sea and sky at the same distance, always surrounding the ship, always moving with it, while somehow never changing. It sharpens in clear weather and blurs in haze. It disappears entirely in fog. But when the weather clears, it is always back, exactly as it was. The same circle, the ship at the center of it. Everything precisely as it has always been. A man who has been on watch for 4 hours has watched this horizon for 4 hours. He watched it through the previous watch too, because the watch before his came up on deck and the horizon was there. He will watch it through the next watch. The horizon is the constant of his working day at sea, the thing that is always in front of him and that never changes, and that he watches anyway, because the alternative is not to watch it, and something might appear on it. Something rarely does, but it might. Experienced sailors say that after enough time at sea, you stop looking at the horizon as a boundary between sea and sky. It becomes something else, a companion almost, something fixed in a world that is otherwise always moving. You are here. The horizon is there. The ship moves, and the horizon stays the same. And you measure the distance between yourself and it, which is always the same distance. And that sameness becomes a comfort rather than a frustration. There is a freedom in it of a kind. You are responsible for the ship and the watch and the small decisions of the next 4 hours. You are not responsible for anything beyond the horizon, because the horizon is as far as the world extends. Whatever is happening on land, in cities and ports, and the lives of people you know, is on the other side of that line and unreachable. You cannot be summoned to it. It cannot reach you. There is only the water and the sky and the work in front of you. And slowly, slowly, the weeks pass. The ship has a cook. His domain is a small, dark space near the bow called the caboose, barely large enough for a man and a stove and the necessary equipment, but his, organized in the way that suits him after years of working in exactly this kind of cramped hot space. He knows where everything is without looking. He works in the heat and the smell of whatever is on the stove, with the ship moving beneath him and the sound of the ocean coming through the bow planking a few feet from where he stands. The stores on a long Atlantic voyage are limited and carefully calculated. Salt beef, packed in barrels with brine to preserve it. Hard ship's biscuit, dense, twice-baked bread that keeps for months without spoiling, though it eventually hardens to something that requires soaking before it can be eaten without damaging the teeth. Dried peas, which can be boiled long and slow into a thick grey soup. Preserved fish when there is some. A small quantity of sugar and molasses, carefully rationed. The cook works within these constraints the way skilled people always work within constraints, finding what variation is possible, making the peas into something more than just boiled peas by adding some of the salt beef and a little of whatever else is available. Making the biscuit into something edible by softening it in the soup. Producing meals that are not pleasurable exactly, but that are warm and filling and mark the progress of the day. The smell of food cooking is one of the most important things on a long voyage. It means warmth. It means the day has a structure, with meals as its markers. It means there is something to look forward to, even if it is the same thing as yesterday, even if it is the same thing it will be tomorrow. When the smell of the caboose drifts across the deck in the morning, the men on watch lift their heads slightly, almost without knowing they are doing it. Something old in them responds to the smell of food cooking in the early morning. Another day, another meal, the ship still moving. The men eating on deck when the weather is good, sitting in whatever space they can find, the bowl balanced on the knees. Or below, at the mess table in the between deck space, the bowl sliding slightly with the motion of the ship, the men steadying them without thinking about it, because steadying things against the motion of the ship is something the body does automatically after a few days at sea. After the meal, the bowls are returned, the work resumes, the bell rings, time continues. The nights at sea in the age of sail were very dark. There was no electric light anywhere in the world in these years, no glow of any city on any horizon. The only artificial light on the ship was the lantern at the stern, swaying with the motion of the vessel, and the small lights carried by the watch on deck when they needed to see something closely. Beyond these, just the dark, the open darkness of the ocean at night, the sky above, undiluted by anything below it. On clear nights, the sky was extraordinary. Without anything competing with it, the night sky at sea in the 18th century was what the night sky looks like when it is only itself. The full depth of it. The Milky Way, a broad structural band crossing from horizon to horizon, rather than a faint smear. The brighter stars casting shadows. The whole system of it wheeling slowly overhead as the night progressed. Sailors who spent their working lives at sea knew this sky with a familiarity that those on land rarely had. They knew which stars appeared at which times of year and at which points of the compass. They knew the arc that specific stars followed across the night and at what point in that arc it was, without looking at a clock. The navigator used these stars. At certain times of night, when the stars were clear and the horizon was visible, he would take his sextant and measure the angle between a chosen star and the horizon. From this measurement, and from the calculations he had been trained to do, he could determine the ship's latitude, how far north or south of the equator she was. Combined with the records of speed and direction kept throughout each watch, he could estimate the ship's position with reasonable accuracy. Not perfect accuracy. The ocean was not that cooperative, but enough to find a port. The ocean has no roads, nothing to navigate by except the sky above and the careful record of where the ship has been and how it has moved. The stars do not lie. They are always where they are supposed to be. The same stars sailors had used for centuries before. The same stars they would use for centuries after. The ship moved on, night after night, guided by light that had been travelling through space for longer than the ship itself had existed. There was a great deal of rope on a sailing ship, more than most people would expect. The standing rigging, the ropes that supported the masts and held them in position against the force of the sails, ran from the mastheads down to the deck in a complex network of stays and shrouds and backstays, each one doing a specific job, each one under constant tension. the running rigging, the ropes used to control the sails, to raise and lower them, to adjust the angle of the yards from which they hung, added another layer of complexity above that. Then the dozens of smaller uses, securing equipment, hoisting loads, fastening things in place for rough weather, the endless minor applications of rope throughout a working ship. A 3-masted merchantman carried miles of rope in total. It degraded continuously under sun and salt and the friction of constant use. Rope that had worn thin at a stress point was replaced before it broke. Rope that had broken was spliced back together if possible, or replaced if not. The ends of all ropes were whipped with twine to prevent the fibres from unravelling. The coils of rope kept at various positions around the deck were maintained in order, ready to run freely when needed. In the quiet watches, when the ship was sailing steadily and there was little to adjust, men would work with rope. Splicing. The careful process of unravelling the end of a rope back into its component strands, and weaving those strands back into the body of the rope or into another rope, producing a join that is nearly as strong as the rope itself and will hold under load. Coiling, knotting, the specific knots for specific purposes, each one performed by hands that had done it hundreds or thousands of times, and that moved through the motions without any need for conscious attention. The hands worked, the sea moved, the ship rocked in its slow rhythm. The bell marked the half hours. This kind of work, repetitive, physical, requiring attention but not thought, was the kind of work that the long middle of a voyage was made of. Not the dramatic work of a storm, where everything was urgent and nothing could be done wrong. Not the navigational work of a difficult landfall, where precision mattered completely. Just the maintenance work, the keeping in order work, the work that needed doing so that when the urgent work came, everything was ready. The rope passed through the hands. The knot formed and held. The coil lay in its place, ready to run. Just the work. Just the rope. Just the sea. There were days when nothing changed at all. The wind held steady from the same quarter, the same strength, from before dawn to after dark. The sails were set and did not need to be touched. The sea was the same sea it had been the day before, the same grey-green, the same long swells from the same direction, lifting the hull in the same rhythm. The bell marked its half hours. The watches changed on schedule. The meals came and went. The sun rose and crossed the sky in its arc and set in the west, and the stars came out in the same positions they were always in, and the night passed, and the sun rose again. On these days, time moved differently. Not slowly, the way time moves slowly when you are waiting for something that is not coming. Not quickly, the way it passes when there is too much to do. Just differently, without the texture that normally gives a day its shape, without the small interruptions and changes and minor events that punctuate a day on land and allow you to look back at the end of it and know that time has passed. just the ship, just the water, just the sound of everything working together steadily, the wind, the sails, the hull, the sea, all of it in a sustained agreement that needed nothing from the men except to maintain it and to leave it alone. The wind doing what wind does, the sails doing what sails do, the hull doing what hulls do, everything as it should be. Old sailors spoke of these days with something like longing when they were back on land. The simplicity of it, the way everything that was not essential had fallen away, and what was left was only what was necessary. On land, life gathered complexity around itself, obligations and relationships, and the small persistent demands of people and places and the passage of time. At sea, on these long, steady days in the middle of the ocean, there was none of that. The wind, the sails, the water beneath, the stars above. Nothing more needed, nothing more possible. Tonight there is only the ship. The bell counting its half hours somewhere above. The men in their hammocks below, tilting slowly with the sea, going wherever the ship goes, carried through the dark without being asked for anything. The cook's fire is banked down for the night. The galley is dark and quiet. The smell of the day's last meal has faded to almost nothing, just the faintest trace of it in the air of the lower decks. The rigging makes its small sounds in the dark, the creak of rope under the tension of the sails, the occasional movement of a block as the wind shifts slightly and the angle of a sail changes by a degree or two. The deep, slow working sound of the hull itself, the sound that a wooden ship makes as it moves through the sea, a sound that is also the sound of the sea pressing back against the wood. The horizon is invisible now. The sky and the sea have merged in the dark, and there is no line between them. Just the stars above and the darkness below, and the ship somewhere between the two, moving steadily through it all, carrying its cargo and its sleeping crew toward a port that is still days away and entirely out of sight. Just the stars, just the water, just the ship moving through the night as it has been moving for weeks. The bell will ring again soon. Someone will take the next watch. The man coming off watch will go below and find his hammock and be asleep before the bell sounds again. The ship will continue. The ocean will continue. The distance will slowly, slowly become less. But not tonight. Tonight the ocean is patient. Tonight everything is as it has been and will be. The bell will ring again soon. Someone will take the next watch. But not you. You are below deck tonight. in the hammock. The ship is moving. Rest now and drift slowly into the arms of Morpheus.